If you are thinking of undertaking the retail transformation initiatives, one of the risks that you may have to consider is of the failure. So we are going to discuss some of the reasons why these transformation initiatives fail in this video. So let's dive in. Hello everyone, my name is Saib Gupta. I am principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP, e-commerce, and digital transformation consulting firm. We help our clients when they might be undertaking any of the e-commerce retail transformation initiatives. We take them from the strategy phase to business case development to the planning as well as the implementation. So let's get back to today's topic, which is going to be top 10 reasons for retail transformation failure in 2023. To compile this list, we are always monitoring in terms of the reasons why these transformation initiatives fail. So now let's look at the list. The number 10 on our list is uncontrollable issues. And for the most part, if you speak to anyone in the software community, they are always going to say that uncontrollable issues are probably going to be common with software or the transformation in implementations because of the invisibility issues. But typically, with any projects that are going to be invisible in nature, if you don't plan well, if you are not going to invest enough time in the discovery phase, then you are going to see a lot more uncontrollable issues. So some of the factors why these issues exist is inability to foresee issues due to limited experience, and that is always the number one reason. Number two is going to be flagging skill set gaps as the uncontrollable issues. So that's number 10. Number 9 on our list is organizational change management. If you speak to anyone who is involved with the transformation initiatives, OCM is probably going to be the number one issue they are going to highlight. But OCM, number one, is sometimes people think of OCM as more of the touchy-feely issues, and some of these issues that we have highlighted on this list can be bundled under OCM. But even for OCM to work, you need far deeper expertise overall from the technical perspective, as well as in aligning the expectations of the stakeholders. If your OCM champions are only going to be deep from the business perspective, the technical perspective is going to be left out, and you are still going to face these issues. So you need the right balance of the technical as well as the functional and business. If you don't have that, then you are going to see a lot more issues. For example, let's say if any of your teams are not able to adopt to a specific system, there could be a lot of different forces that might be in play for them to be struggling with these systems. And some of those could be just the trading issue, which falls under your OCM branch, but there could also be, let's say, if the design of the system is not as optimum as it should be, or let's say if the selected systems that you have utilized to build your architecture, if they are not optimal for your business use cases as well as the user workflows, then you are still going to see the adoption issues. Now, if you simply want to solve them using your training, then it's not going to work, and that's why analyzing it comprehensively is very important. So OCM is just going to be a symptom, but there might be other issues that might be in play that you need to resolve even for OCM to work. But OCM is definitely going to be a number 9 issue for these failures, and that's why it is on our list. Now, number 8 on our list is inability to re-engineer processes aligned with the capabilities of the new architecture. And when you look at the traditional processes, and some of these are going to be very religious discussions, and sometimes it's very hard for business stakeholders to see why the processes need to be re-engineered and why the technical teams can't figure out how to implement this in the architecture as well as in the systems. But typically, even as a small issue as, for example, let's say if you're not willing to change your pricing discount, or your pricing may be unique, and if that is not going to be technically feasible in implementing, sometimes the cost could be millions and millions of dollars. So typically the technical team is going to analyze the technical feasibility in terms of what is going to be possible, especially in the budget that you may be thinking for these initiatives. And even if you are able to implement, sometimes the processes are going to be so over bloated that you might have OCM issues. So you still have to think about re-engineering the processes. If you are not able to do that, you are going to have issues with your transformation. The other issue most people don't really understand is most of the systems that you have in the architecture, they are designed with certain assumptions, certain constraints. And if you are going to change the state of one system because of your inflexibility on a specific process, that is going to throw off the state of the other system that may be downstream, upstream, depending upon wherever that is there in your architecture. So re-engineering of your processes are still critical for the success of your transformation initiatives, and that's why it is at number 8 on our list. Now, number 7 on our list is the poorly selected technologies. And this is the similar issue as re-engineering, but a different twist. So here, let's say if you look at the way companies select the systems, they typically are not going to have as much expertise with the implementation unless you have hired a consultant who is going to have the implementation experience to be able to select the technology. Also, in general, the companies don't invest enough in the discovery and the solution architecture before implementing it. And if you are going to have the data model that is not in line with your master data, with your business model, with your business processes, then you are most likely to struggle with the system. And the symptoms that you are going to see is going to be in your inventory, it's going to be in your scheduling, planning processes. And if it is not going to feel that the system is natural fit for your users, most likely they are going to hijack processes. So that's why it is very important to select the right technology. Even if you have one component that is not going to be the right fit for your architecture, that is going to throw off your entire architecture, and you are going to see the issues with your transformation, not only in terms of adoption, but overall from the performance perspective as well. And that's why selecting the right technologies is super critical for these transformation initiatives. And that's why it ranks at number 7 on our list. Now, number 6 on our list is the poor master data governance. And the data, the processes, as well as tools and technologies, they all go hand in hand. If you are going to have the data that is not controlled through the processes, even if you have, let's say, the manual processes and training material, and people are not able to comply with the master data governance issues, it's going to be really hard to enforce them. And because of that, sometimes what happens is the data is going to be all over the place. And because of that, the users are going to see performance issues, and they are again going to hijack the processes. They will not be using the system. So that's why, number 1, you need to analyze the master data in terms of how the synchronization as well as the reconciliation flows are going to work across the system. And that's why that comprehensive view of the enterprise architecture across the system boundaries is going to be super critical. And once you have the data reconciliation flow in terms of who is going to be the producer, who is going to be consumer. Then once you have all of that identified, then you need to have the control built as part of each of the system so that the state of data is going to be maintained. Yes, you need the training as well. You need the compliance guidelines, but those are not going to be sufficient to enforce the integrity of your master data. That's why planning for these controls as part of your system boundaries is super critical. And when it comes to source of truth, there are a lot of different myths. For example, multiple source of truth. The multiple source of truth exist, but for each of the data element. For example, let's say if you talk about the item master. In case of item master, it could have many different attributes. Each of those attributes could belong to different source systems, but there has to be only one source that is responsible for that data field. It can be augmented by the other system. Other systems might be able to add the more fields to the same item master or the customer or vendor master, but for the most part, if you look at just one data field, that has to belong from one system and that has to be the producer. The other systems are going to be just the consumer. So overall, when you look at the master data governance, there are a lot of different myths around what works for master data, but for the most part, you need to figure out the whole enterprise architecture. If you are not going to do that, then you are most likely to see issues with your architecture, and that's why it is number 6 on our list. Now, number 5 on our list is immature enterprise architecture. And when you look at the enterprise architecture, some people might think that this is more of the technical term and this is only relevant for your technology. Enterprise architecture has been thought of from many different perspectives. When you talk to any of the process people or the project management people, they might have the similar concepts or the terminology, but they all are trying to attack the same problem. In simple terms, the whole idea of your enterprise architecture is going to be, it's going to have 3 or 4 different legs, and all of those legs are going to be equally important. Number 1 is going to be your business architecture. Number 2 is going to be your process architecture. Number 3 is going to be your data architecture. And number 4, which is the least important, is going to be your technology architecture. If you do your job right with respect to your business, process, and data, then most likely your technology is going to work. And if you ignore these or you underestimate how right these need to be, or if you don't involve your technical teams in defining the business architecture, then most likely there is going to be a misalignment between your technical as well as business team, and you are going to see issues with your implementation. And that's why the enterprise architecture is super critical when you talk about integrating multiple systems in your architecture, when you talk about designing the master data workflows. All of that is bundled as part of your enterprise architecture, regardless of whether you use one system, multiple systems, package software, custom development, it doesn't matter. The enterprise architecture is still going to be important. The immature enterprise architecture is one of the core reasons why digital or the retail transformation initiatives fail, and that's why it ranks at number 5 on our list. Number 4 on our list is unrealistic expectations. And typically, unrealistic expectations is because of the inexperience or lack of experience in executing these transformation initiatives. The more experience you are going to get, the more appreciative you are going to be in terms of the process, why these things take so long, and you are going to be slightly more patient with the process. Asking your tech vendors or the technical teams to reduce the effort when it is really going to take 5 months for the project, and if we are asking them to deliver in 2 months, they are going to cut corners in the discovery, in the testing, in training, and then you are going to see these issues in the production. And typically, when you are going to have these issues in production, the cost of maintaining those or cost of fixing those is going to be way higher, and that's why it is at number 4 on our list. Misalignment in scope is the number 3 issue on our list. Now, the misalignment happens also because of the similar issues that we have discussed on this list, primarily due to not investing enough time in the discovery phase. If you don't put enough effort, and if you are not analyzing the processes as well as data and systems in the discovery phase, in the pre-selection phase, the misalignment in scope is going to be there. Sometimes you are going to provide the details, the consultants are going to take back, and they are going to assume certain things, and sometimes those assumptions fire back, and they are going to take far longer than what was agreed in that scope. If you were reasonable with the scope and the expectations from the beginning, you would probably have far easier lifetime in general with the project. So the other issues why misalignment is in the scope happens is because listening to sales team or salespeople who might not have as much experience overall with the implementation, and they are most likely to be over committing just to close the deal, and then after that you are most likely not going to see them during the implementation phase. So make sure you do enough research, put enough time in the discovery phase, listen to the consultants who are going to be involved during the implementation phase. Typically they are going to be slightly more reasonable because they have to deliver, and they will not be able to deliver if they are not being true to themselves. So that's why speaking to implementation team and having the right expectation of the scope is key for the success of your retail transformation initiatives. And that's why misalignment in scope, number 3 on our list. Now, number 2 on our list is inability to work with experts. The more experience you get in working with experts or the consultants, the easier life you are going to have, the consultants are going to have, the more reasonable you are going to be with your expectations. Typically, yes, there are going to be some vendors that might be, let's say you might feel that, vendors are trying to get foot in the door. They are also trying to build their hours. That's in their best interest. But at the same time, the problem is also with the customers. And you need to be thinking that, okay, when you are working with the consultants, they have to deliver. If they are saying something need to be followed, listen to them, pay attention to that, ask them to explain why it is critical and what are going to be the pros and cons. And if you don't do enough research, and if you are going to be making decisions on behalf of them, then most likely they are going to simply concede and going to do whatever you are going to tell them when you might not have that expertise. So micromanaging is probably going to be one of the factors why that is going to be a red flag for these retail transformation initiatives, and pretending to listening to them and not really following their recommendations and not providing the autonomy for their jobs is one of the reasons why these retail transformation initiatives fail, and that's why it is at number 2 on our list. Now, number 1 on our list is politics and power struggle. And this is very common, like it or not. You are always going to have this when you have the cross-functional initiatives. And typically these issues exist when you are not willing to give up on some of the proprietary systems. Sometimes the executives might not be willing to do that just because they might feel that they are going to lose the power, or they may have invested in that particular system just because they felt that it was their baby and they wanted to invest in that and they were going to get substantial benefit, but the assumptions that they had made in the past may no longer be true. And because of that, if you keep that particular system in the new architecture, it might throw off the entire transformation as well as your architecture. So you want to make sure that even if you liked one of the system, if you don't re-engineer that, if you're not willing to kill that, you might still have issues. The other issue that we notice from the political perspective is some of the vendors may try to push their IP. So you really need to get into the contract who is owning which particular IP and why they are trying to push for certain component or the product. And sometimes that could be a significant risk because they are trying to create the tight coupling with their product, with their IP. So you need to keep that in mind. And this IP could be a substantial factor why these retail transformation initiatives fail. So that's number 1. If you enjoyed this list, we are going to include the link for a detailed article. So you may want to check that out. Also, this podcast is published in the audio form on Google, Spotify, and Apple. So check that out, as well as hit the subscribe button if you like it. We publish these videos on a weekly basis. So you may want to hit the subscribe button on YouTube and we publish our digital transformation report on an yearly basis. If you have not checked that, you may want to check, and we are going to include the link below. On that note, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one.